Ridley Scott is back with his Napoleon movie starring Joaquin Phoenix. And I got to tell you this, guys, it's a movie. It's a passable movie. Is it something that you need to see in the theater? Ooh, well, the war scenes, the big battles, it's a spectacle for sure. But I think you mostly watch it because of Vanessa Kirby and Joaquin Phoenix. Like, that's your draw, right? And Ridley Scott. Joaquin Phoenix working with Ridley Scott again. It's got to be a big draw, right? But here's the problem with my analysis of this movie. It felt very much like, yeah, you're seeing stuff from history. Even though, who cares if, right now, I'm not going to address if it's accurate or not. You're just watching these scenes all put together. There's a lot of time jumps. So there's no cohesive narrative here with the story regarding Napoleon as a character. You're just seeing events from his life. So when the big events happen, wars and battles, you're kind of like, well, there it is. There's no stakes. You don't feel the stakes. You're not rooting for Napoleon. You're not rooting for the other side either. You're just watching a big action sequence on the big screen. And I don't know if that's going to be enough for some people. It was barely enough for me. And at first glance, you would say, well, it was shot beautifully. But was it? It had a lot of muted color palette, color tones. Cinematically, everything was dulled down. It wasn't very vibrant. But that's a director's choice, right? That's what Ridley Scott was going for. And yeah, the performances are good. But it's like, there's no big moment in it where you're going to be like, that's the moment that just won Joaquin Phoenix another nomination for Best Actor. There's nothing like that. And I really wish that I could say that there would be a moment in there for Vanessa Kirby as well. To say, okay, yeah, she's really good in it. That's the moment that she won me over and she deserves to be nominated for Best Actress. There's not. There's no moment in that. They're good. They're serviceable. They're higher than serviceable. They're good, but there's no moment in there where you're like, wow. There's no moment in here like Lily Gladstone in Killers of the Flower Moon where you're like, wow. Granted, yes, Vanessa Kirby was good. Joaquin Phoenix was good. But as a narrative, it's just a bunch of sequences from his life, and that's pretty much, like, I gotta expect what the synopsis reads here on IMDb. An epic that details the checkered rise and fall of French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte and his relentless journey to power through the prism of his addictive, volatile relationship with his wife, Josephine. Well, that's almost like a footnote, that marriage to it. It's like, yeah, it's there. There's stuff going on there. And there's moments that they tee up in the movie where it's kind of like, oh, okay, I know that one guy was looking at her in a weird way, and Napoleon saw that, and you would expect it to go down that road of Napoleon finding that guy and hanging him up by his Buster Browns. But you don't see that. You don't get any of that. Things just happen, and there's very little payoff. And people would say, well, but the payoffs are the big action sequences. There's got to be a big payoff where doesn't Joaquin Phoenix have a big speech in here that rouses you up? And it's kind of like, no, you don't get that either. So it's kind of like, he's just there. He's got a lot of character in his face at parts, but it felt like it lacked heart. Now, I want to address one more thing here before I look at the early score sheet. A lot of people will say, well, James, it's Ridley Scott. Haven't you watched his other movies, Kingdom of Heaven? There was like a longer extended cut of that. And once you watch that version, then you'll understand what's going on. And people will say, well, yeah, James, there's a 4-hour cut of Napoleon. And once you watch that part, then this movie will make a whole bunch of sense. No, stop that. That's a terrible argument. Because what you're saying, you're actually admitting to me and yourself that Ridley Scott failed in delivering a quality movie first out. It shouldn't have to rely on that 4-hour cut of me watching it to make sense of it. It shouldn't. Or to say that, oh, now it's finally a good film. Now it's a good film. That theatrical cut, though, no, just stay away from that. No. Ridley Scott didn't really deliver a fantastic film. There's nothing about Napoleon here, this new movie, that makes me say, that would make me recommend it to people who are looking for a good film to go out and see this weekend. There's nothing about it that has me saying, go see it because of this, go see it because of that. There's nothing about it. It's just kind of like there. This is the kind of movie that will only draw people who are fans of Ridley Scott, fans of Joaquin Phoenix, fans of Vanessa Kirby, maybe historians who want to pick this movie apart for its historical inaccuracies. And yes, I know that there's lots of them. But it's kind of like, as a movie as a whole, it's done and you're just kind of like, okay, who wants to go out for a cheeseburger? And then you'll totally forget about it. It's not a memorable theatrical experience, and it's a bit of a bummer. So let me pull up my early score sheet and we'll go through some of the numbers here. We'll start to crunch this down. Acting, directing, and story are out of a possible 2 points each. Now, I will give 1.5 for the acting because both Joaquin Phoenix and Vanessa Kirby are good, but there's no moment in there where I'm just like, that's Oscar worthy. That's Oscar. No, there's not. And it's a bummer because it opened up in a very good way where you could see that Napoleon was going to have some arc there. Like they feel like, yeah, when he gets corrupted by the power to be like emperor and stuff like that, you wanted to see him like dig his teeth into that because, Joaquin Phoenix can do that. You just don't get it. You don't get it. And I'm not going to, for directing wise, I'm going to only give 1 point. I'm not going to say that because this movie does have story problems. It does. I'll give it 0.5 for story. And that's being harsh. 0.5 because it's just a bunch of events that just happens. Again, it's kind of like when his downfall happens at Waterloo. And we all know, well, that's history, James. When that happens, you wanted to see it kind of like being like a more crushing defeat, but it's just kind of like he's just sitting there going, that's it. And that's it. So when I look at that, based on that, that's all I can give. Cinematography and score out of a possible 1 point each. So the soundtrack to this was actually fairly good, the score. So I will give the score a full point for the music. Good use of music did help out it quite a bit. Cinematography. Let's talk about that because cinematography-wise, as I said, it is well framed, and it does have a washed-out color palette, which I think they were trying to use to try to emulate, oh, this is a historical piece that you should be looking at. Like, see how everything is kind of washed out here? You kind of get that throughout the film. And yeah, it's framed well. And in the battles too, it's kind of like all muted and washed out as well. I just don't feel the threat or the peril from these fights. I don't. It's been done better. So I can't give it for cinematography. I can't. So that's pretty much where I land on those rankings. Let's go over to the tomato meter and see what people are saying about this. Ooh, wow. 60% by critics, 61% by the audience. So they're about the same there. We'll have to take a look at some of the snapshot reviews here because I gotta get a measure of the room here. 60% by critics. So it's not going to be Best Picture. I don't think it will be. Let's take a look at what people are saying here. Irish Times liked it. Said, it hardly needs to be said that 2.5 hours progress at a fair lick. Indeed, at times the film plays like an enormous trailer for the 4-hour version, rumored to be heading towards Apple TV. Again, so somebody liked it, but they're like, this is a trailer for the 4-hour version. Again, he's admitting that this version of the film is not good, is basically what you're saying. And he still liked it. Now, I'm guessing it's because he's trying to, acquiesce or pay homage and respects to Ridley Scott. I don't get it. I don't understand that. See who somebody who didn't like it. Toronto Star. Napoleon is the rare film that feels too short for its topic, even with its running time approaching 3 hours. Yeah, it's just under 3 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes or something like that, right? And pacing-wise, pacing of it is kind of like, you will look at your watch or your phone to see what time it is at least once or twice, because you'd be like, well, where's this going? What's happening? How much of his story are you going to actually show? Are we going to get past Waterloo? And then towards the end, it does feel a little bit crammed in. It does. Los Angeles Times liked it. It glimmers of comic rage and generous helpings of battlefield carnage, though patchily entertaining on their own, never coalesce into a coherent reason for being. Phoenix, you might well argue, is reason enough. Well, again, for the most part, he's just standing on the battlefield looking at things. And is that good enough? Just to be standing there looking at the battlefield? And I would say, I don't know. No, it's not enough. 6%. 60. It's not a good score, man. It's not. Yeah. And I don't think people are going to resonate with this one. And I was thinking about some of Ridley Scott's other films that dealt with history. Like, obviously Gladiator is his best, but like when you think about Exodus, Gods and Kings, it's kind of like this one too, where it's kind of like, well, there's a bunch of things that happened, but you don't feel the weight for any of the characters. You don't really care about what the whole movie's about. It comes and goes, it's gone. And that's what's going to happen with this movie. I think it's going to come and go, and some people will stick around and hold out to say that the 4-hour version is totally worthwhile and makes it the movie a totally different movie. Well, then it should have just come out on streaming services. Why did you waste putting it out in the theater? Because you thought that maybe you could get some cheddar back? Well, the movie cost around $200 million, just like Killers of the Flower Moon. And it's going to have a run for its money, because it's going to be up against the second week of Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, Hunger Games. But it's got Wish. It's going to be competing with Wish. Saltburn opens up this weekend. Thanksgiving. I think it's going to have a tough time, man. It's going to have a tough time. And I don't know if... I would just say go see it when you have it on Apple TV+. That's what I would say. It's not worth the time or money to see it in the theater. And that sucks. And I said that it was a good movie. It was passable. But I'm a movie fan. I'm a movie fan. And if I had my choice and see this or Saltburn, I'm kind of wishing that I maybe would have gone to see Saltburn. We'll have to see. That'll play out through the end of the week. I'll see Saltburn this weekend and I'll let you know. So, going into the watchability factor, as I said, if you're a Joaquin Phoenix fan, then you'll want to check it out. And why is that not working for me? Wow, James. Wow. Watchability factor, 0.5. Yeah. So the watchability factor is 0.5, but I would say that if you're a cinephile, if you're a movie fan, you're a Ridley Scott fan, Joaquin Phoenix fan, it's worth checking out at least once. I just wouldn't go out to the theater for it. Wow, 5.5 for Napoleon, James. I think that's it. We wanted Gladiator, but we got the French version of House of Gucci, Bifer says in the live chat. Yeah, 5.5 for me is probably where I'm going to have to land for Napoleon, man. It's not one of the worst movies of the year. It's not, but it's just not memorable. It's not riveting. You're not going to be like, ooh, those battle sequences. It's just there. 5.5. There it is. All right, guys, if you're going to go out and see it this weekend, let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. What else can you find on the channel? If you like this kind of stuff, my review will be up on the channel later on, but my review for Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is up on the channel, as well as The Marvels and Priscilla. Of course, we do Survivor full watch-alongs, and we do Hell's Kitchen watch-alongs here on the channel, so come watch us for that. We do movie news 2 or 3 times throughout the week, where we talk about all the trending movie news headlines of the day. So if you like movies, you like TV shows, Mirror Domains is where you want to be, because we talk everything movies here. Let me know what you thought about Napoleon if you saw it, and I'll see you next time. You're watching Mirror Domains. All right. I feel like I've addressed everything there that I thought that I wanted to. Let's take some live comments here, because you guys are talking about it. As I said, it's not an awful movie or anything. It's just there. All right. Byford in Live Chat says the Napoleon War scene made me want to watch Glory 1989 right after. Yeah, Glory. See, you talked about Glory there. You felt all the weight of those battle sequences, right? Like when they first went into battle in the forest there, and you're like, these are unproven men, and then you get to see them prove themselves. That's high. There's some stakes there. And then towards the end, when you realize that Robert wanted to take his regiment in first, knowing that they were going to be high casualties because of that previous conversation with Denzel Washington, where it's kind of like, here's a chance for us to go out with honor kind of thing, right? And have good records of our names. That's why he chose to go in first. There's nothing like that here. It's just, this is the battle sequence for this moment in time. Okay. Like that whole lake sequence that we see in the trailers, it's just there. It doesn't feel like there's much weight to it. Napoleon lacked a bad guy. He needed a Darth Vader Hannibal. There were talks in there politically of him talking with Russia and stuff, and talking about like the European movements throughout the, I guess, blockades or wars that were going on to try to quell the trading markets to Britain. And I would have wished they would have stepped up, maybe ramped that up a little bit more, and maybe that's in the 4-hour version, but I'm not, if you're not presenting it to me now, then it was just too much. Overall, Napoleon was trying to do, as a movie, too much. Just take a small segment of his life, amplify some of it, sensationalize it, maybe it would have been a little bit better. Arglass says, it seems that Ridley Scott had a ticking box exercise that was just doing epic by numbers. Yeah. And I don't look at this and say, well, this is, I can't even say that it was an interesting view of history, because we know that a lot of liberties were taken with it, right? I can't even say that. Napoleon should have been pitted against Admiral Lord Nelson. And that's what I was waiting for. I was like, maybe, like in the history books, was there not other big generals or something that like they could have shown, perhaps? And it's kind of like, it wasn't there, right? Duke of Wellington, yeah, there was the Duke of Wellington, but it was just there. Tsar Alexander. So it had ingredients in there that it could have been perhaps under a better storyteller than Ridley Scott for this material. I know Ridley Scott fans out there don't like me talking about him like that, because some of them are just like, no, he made Gladiator, so he's a master. Well, his past track record doesn't seem to reflect that. It doesn't. So, whoops. Let's go back to the comments here. Was Master and Commander starring Russell Crowe a better movie, or two different? No, actually, Master and Commander was a way better movie than Napoleon. Oh, yeah. Actually, I want to revisit Master and Commander. I remember liking it quite a bit when I saw it. I want to revisit that. In true Ridley style, Byford says, it took 9 attempts to refine Blade Runner into its definitive form, hence a 4-hour rendition of Napoleon should ideally surpass expectations. Well, I don't even know if that'll help. I don't know, because the same battle sequences will still happen. The same amount of subject matter will be encased in it. And yeah, the stuff with him and Josephine is interesting, and I wish that would have been a more focal point of the movie than the battles. Like, it made me think about Marie Antoinette by Sofia Coppola, and that movie, you it's just a slice of how she came into power, right? And or like how she rose up and became like somebody who threw away the fortunes and stuff like that. It never got to the beheading stuff, right? It kind of like depicted just the loss of her innocence, kind of thing. And I wish this movie Napoleon was a bit like that, where it just focused in on focusing on the Battle of Waterloo and his fall there, and then what happens after that. Like that's enough material that's a movie there, but it's kind of like crammed into the last 25 minutes, and it's like if you amplified certain things and built up scenes to build towards something like the payoff of his downfall, and because of his hubris, because of his, he thought that he could do everything kind of thing, and the fall from grace of that, like he earned his stripes on the battlefield, but then he just kind of like throws it all away. There was that story there that could have been amplified and ramped up a little bit more with better execution, and that goes on the director. And most people don't like to hear that because it's Ridley Scott, but I'm sorry, it does. It falls solely on his shoulders. All right, so that is my review. We will go back into some movie news topics here. Will it be nominated for anything? Maybe soundtrack, score. I can't even say cinematography, guys, because as I said, look at it. Here, it's all kind of washed out. Yeah, it's framed well, but cinematically, I think it's probably one of Ridley Scott's weaker films cinematically.